Hi everyone, my name is Ketrimium Premchandra and I welcome you to a discussion on Thangyam Ibovisak's poem, The Land of the Half Humans. On your screen, you have a brief bio of the poet. He's a very famous Manipuri poet, especially famous for his one particular poem, I Want to Be Killed by an Indian Bullet. So you can take a screenshot if you want to study further more about this poet and his writings, his poetry. Let's read the poem. For 6 months, just head without body. 6 months, just body without head. Has anyone seen a land inhabited by these people? So the poet is posing this question to the readers. He is asking, have you ever come across, have you ever seen a land where you have only heads for 6 months? And for the remaining 6 months, there would be only bodies. So a land where people would have only heads for 6 months, only bodies for the remaining 6 months. Have you ever come across such a land? No, I have. It's not a folk tale. I have not only seen, but have been to the land. So no, with a question mark, is still asking this question. Still, you haven't figured out yet. That's the kind of question he's asking. At the same time, he is answering, I have. It's not a folk tale. It's not some fairy tale. It's not some made up word. I have actually seen such a land. I have been to that particular land. I know such a land, the existence of such a land. Of course, he's talking about his native land, Manipur. And as we move along, we'll find out more about what he's talking about. For 6 months, to talk and to eat is their job, like a millstone grinding, continuously, with that very irritating sound, gang, 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 that kind of sound. Uh, these people, for 6 months, I mean, the job of the heads is just to talk and eat, like something grinding. The following 6 months, Bhima gorging and Sakuni suffering. Another 6 months, the first 6 months, since there are only heads, they are eating and talking only. For the remaining 6 months, there would be only bodies. So what would happen if the head has eaten? Kya hoga? The body has to empty the stomach, empty the bowels. So he takes this allusion from the Mahabharata, where there is this one particular episode. I don't know whether this happens in the uh, real Mahabharata, but in the Manipuri version of Mahabharata, in the Wari level tradition, storytelling tradition, we have this episode of him, eating as much as he can, and simultaneously, whatever Bhim eats, Sakuni would be emptying his stomach. Sakuni would be sitting, whatever Bhim eats. I'm sorry for using this word, but that's basically what the point has used. So anyway, I'll be using this. So like that. So the head eats, the body empties. The head talks, it drinks, that's talking, eating, drinking. So that's basically the job of the head. Eating, drinking, talking, eating, drinking. It keeps on. I mean, the cycle keeps on repeating again and again for 6 months. And what happens after that cycle ends, when the new cycle starts? While the body is working, laboring, sitting. What the body is doing, now the head is no longer there. So the body is laboring, sitting, and working. There's three things: work, 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 sit, sit, sit. To sweat, to be bone weary in the land of the half body. So while the head is, having the goal of life, the best time of life, eating and talking and drinking, while the body is doing working, it's sweating, it's working their fingers to the bone. And all these things are happening in the land of the half body. Do women live in the land? What does the species of women look like? So again, another question is posed to us and also posed to the poet. And then the poet answers, yes, there are women, there are children. The same goes for women too, half and half body. So for women also it's the same thing. 6 months, only head. 6 months, the next 6 months, only body. They have long hair like the women of our land. Doesn't this line remind you of Gulliver's Travels Book 4 by Jonathan Swift? Anyway, let's move on. They are big, tall, buxom, broad, and well proportioned. They have the best figure. Women of this land have the best figure. They have long hair, best figure. As for clothes, they hang them below the waist. They just casually hang the cloth below the waist. Why? Because the law of the land does not permit a body hidden by clothes. What does the law of the land say? A law of the land says, do not hide your body. That's the reason why they loosely hang the cloth below the waist. It means that above the waist, you cannot wear anything. So you have to expose your upper part. When the body dwells for 6 months, it is springtime for them. So what the poet is saying is that it is springtime. It is the mating season when only the bodies dwell. For 6 months, continuously, it is the mating season. Since the bodies are headless, when the men and women meet, they are not fastidious. Meaning, there is no such rule which stops them from mating. Because remember, human beings must satisfy certain physical needs, but they are not choosy at all. And since there are no rules, why there are no rules? Because those bodies become headless. Those bodies become headless bodies, and you cannot identify to whose head or face do that does that body belong to. So it's free for everyone. That's the reason why he uses the term springtime for them. So they would do what everyone else would do because there is no such hard and fast rule as to who you should mate and who you should not mate. M-A-T-E, mate. Next, the head only gives birth within 6 months. Besides talking and eating, the mouths of the women also deliver babies. What happened to the heads of men in that land? They talk, they eat, and they drink. For a woman, there is another added work. That is, women also deliver babies through their mouths. And it takes just 6 months because all the mating between men and women is done during that 6 months period. Then in the next 6 months, where you would find only heads, that's the time they give birth. The women have more attributes than the men do, meaning they have more qualities, perhaps more responsibilities. This is why the women have not yet. Perhaps that's the reason why they have not yet. What he's trying to say here is that since they have more responsibilities and more activities to perform, their teeth do not last very long. It can also signal something which has to do with aging. Perhaps the point is trying to say that women age a lot faster than men do. Right? God created them with ingenuity. God created them with lots of inventiveness and lots of care. This is like saying, Kudarat ne furusat se banaya, something like that. That's how God created women. When the head walks, its two broad fan-like ears spread wide and it flies like a bird. For 6 months, there would be only heads, and those heads must also somehow travel, somehow make movements. So this is how the poet is making the heads move around. What is he saying? He says the heads have two broad fan-like ears. The ears would spread, they would flap like a bird, and they would fly. So the two ears function like the wings of a bird. They would flap and they would fly. When they speak, we can comprehend their language. They speak the language of man. When they speak, you can fully understand what they are speaking because they speak the human language. But when the headless body speaks, a voice that no stranger can recognize emits from an orifice of the body. But when now, of course, the head can speak because the head has the mouth, the organ through which you speak. I mean, there are other organs, responsible for producing sound, but let's assume that mouth is needed in order to articulate, in order to speak. But since the body doesn't have the mouth, you have to somehow make them communicate, make them speak. So the poet says that the crevices, the holes and the openings of the body in this body is kind of emit sounds, produce sounds. This voice is also accompanied by an odor. So this voice, this how the the odor that comes out of the scent, or call it a fragrance, or call it whatever you want. The odor that comes out of these openings, holes, somehow make them, communicate. That's what the poet is saying. I'm not making up anything, okay? That's basically what the poet is saying. Right, next. A land such as this one is in the news, a land much talked about. So since we know the poet is talking about Manipur, he's also reminding us that Manipur doesn't hit the headlines. Manipur doesn't make the headlines until or unless it is something as heinous as an ethnic violence, ethnic class, or an attack on the army or a bomb blast. Something of that sort would definitely make the headlines. But of course, we are always in the news. We are always talked about. Why? Because of all that is happening in Manipur. So he says, a land such as this is in the news, a land much talked about. People certainly know about this land. People certainly understand what is happening there in Manipur. But this is a land where the moon shines at night and the sun shines in the afternoon. But this is a land which is turned really upside down. There is no predicament of poverty. Dirt of food and the clothes is unknown. He's using his wit, humor, and sarcasm and satire, irony, whatever is there in his armory. He's using everything in order to, tell us that, oh, look, there is nothing happening. There is no poverty. There is no scarcity of food. We have plenty of clothes to, clothe us. He's saying all these things, but we know that, all these things are not there. There is widespread poverty. There is a scarcity of food and resources. We are basically poor. We don't produce anything. We don't make anything. We are surrounded by 9 hills. At the same time, the poet also says, some men even surpass Kuber. Kuber is the Hindu god of wealth. He says some Manipuris are so rich that, even Kuber ko bhi sharam aa jayega, that kind of stuff. Some men are richer than Kuber, and the earnings of the body's sweat of 6 months, the 6 month all had its up with a vengeance. So since the bodies work, labor, they would be earning a lot of things. What do they earn? Sweat. They sweat out a lot. They sweat a lot. So the heads, with a sense of revenge, would eat up all the earnings of the body after, you know, after their time came. So the heads would eat up the earnings of the bodies, meaning those who are powerful, those who are in the political, parties, or rather the political class, would exploit the working class. Next, there are political rights. A government is set up in the land. So that irony is still, here in these lines. It says democracy functions with total success. So there are political rights, which is absolute nonsense. Basically, we are talking about 1990s Manipur, the early 90s Manipur. Government is set up in the land. There was no sense of governance in Manipur in the 90s. It was free for everyone. Democracy functions with total success. He's using, the highest form of satire to say that, these are the things happening, but the fact is that nothing of this sort was happening in Manipur. An election is held every 5 years, but for the people in this land, there are no names. So everything is there. All the government institutions, the political setup, all the funding, the political rights, the government, and whatever is holding all these institutions together, which is democracy, is also there. But unfortunately, the citizens of that particular place do not have any name to themselves. Why? So far, the nameless citizens, the nameless representatives govern the land of the half humans. Of course, he's talking about who the real government is. Once upon a time, there was this talk about who the real government is. Why? Because on one hand, you have the elected government. On the other hand, you have the other government who are already out of the Constitution of India. Those who are within the Constitution of India, and those who have gone out of Constitution of India, and those who challenge the Constitution of India. So there was this tug of war between these two forces, because whether to give human names to the land or to the body, no one can decide. So on one hand, you have the ruling class. So the head represents the ruling class. The body represents the working class. So you don't know who to give more power, right? Whether to give human names to the head or to the body. Who should get the name, to the head or to the body? Who should receive the name? Should the head receive the name or the body receive the name? So the tug of war keeps on happening, and it continues for a long time. A land such as this is very much in the news, a land much talked about. So he repeats this line, which you found in the previous slide. This is a land which is much in the news. This is a land people often talk about. People know what happens in a place like Manipur. So that's how the poem ends very quickly. I made this graphics. I borrowed things from here and there from the internet. So this is what I was talking about. The head, the poet says, the head talks, eats, drinks, just talking, eating, drinking. They represent, which I call the happy class, the haves, and they are basically the rulers. The head rules the body, not the body rules the head. Now, on your right side, you have the body only, and the poet writes, while the body is working, laboring, sitting, work, labor, sit, to sweat, to be born weary, they represent the labor class. They are the have-nots. Also, they are the subjects, meaning citizens. And in this yellow box, I wrote something for you. There was total chaos in the early 90s and the general distrust in the system and the political class. There was this just distrust for, you know, the political class. And why the poet is, expressing in this manner? Why the poet is saying that, there is this, general distrust in the system and in political class? Is because there was this disappointment and frustration of the people on the government. There was also corruption and anarchy and distrust in the state machinery. People were fighting on the streets. There were buns and dharnas and bomb blasts and shootouts. So many things were happening. There was total chaos, total anarchy. There was no sense of governance. The police would do whatever they would want. The army would do whatever they wanted, and the common citizens were stuck between the security forces and the insurgent groups. And the government was just sitting there doing nothing. That's basically what the poet is trying to tell us. So some of the themes, some of the issues highlighted in this poem are: number one, moral bankruptcy; number two, hypocrisy and corruption; number three, the issue of haves and have-nots; number four, this whole notion of wanting to have a perfect society, an ideal society, and that perfection, that uh, ideal society somehow cannot be achieved, and that ideal society soon turns into a dystopian society, absolutely dysfunctional society. Number five, degradation of social and political institutions, which I talked about. And number six, lawlessness. These are some of the issues the poet highlights in the poem. And in the beginning, I talked about this particular folk tale. This poem reminds me of one particular folk tale which you would find in Manipuri folklore. I'll just briefly narrate the folk tale. Sorry, there are two brothers. One is extremely clever. The one is extremely foolish. So their father died, and the father left a cow. Now the elder brother, who is extremely clever, wants to marry. So when he wants to marry, he tells his brother, "Oh brother, let's divide the property that our father left." So their father left many things, out of which one is the cow. So the clever brother suggests that, oh, you take the body part. No, sorry, you take the head part, and I'll take the body part. So the foolish brother agrees to his division of the property. So every morning he wakes up early and feeds the cow. Why? Because the foolish one has taken the head part and comes back, and after everything is done, the clever brother will milk the cow. use the cow dung, etc., etc. And this thing was going on for a long time. Then the foolish brother somehow realizes that his brother is exploiting him. There was a fight, and there was this reconciliation between the two brothers. So that is the folk tale. I see some similarity between this folk tale and the poem that Tharjam Ibo Bisak has written. There is another twist to this poem. I spoke with Tharjam Ibo Bisak, and he told me that this poem is inspired by one of the stories you would find in an anthology of short stories called Fair Tree of the Void. It is written by Vilas Sarang. He is a short story writer from Maharashtra. The story is in fact funny. He was laughing while he was narrating this story. So what happened was there was this guy called this famous Manipuri playwright called J.C. Tongbrand. He went to Maharashtra, Bombay. When he came back, he brought this a collection of short stories. So Professor N. Tombi, another critic and friend of both J.C. Tongbrand and Tharjam Ibo Bisak, read this some of the folk tales. And on one occasion, Professor N. Tombi narrated some of the stories. And I asked him if he remembered the name of the short story, and he told me that he cannot remember the name of the short story. Anyway, long story short, so he was so inspired by that particular short story that he wrote this particular poem. Why? Because he found similarities between that short story and what he sees in front of him, what is there in front of him. Remember, Manipuri poets live from, their lived, writes from their lived experiences. Whatever they experience, they write. So the language may not be as flowery and as beautiful as, poetry from Bombay or Delhi or Calcutta, but whatever they write, all those words are coming out from their own hearts. That's it for today. Hope to meet you again in another video. If you liked it, like the discussion today, please leave a comment and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much.